Greetings on behalf of the Planning Accreditation Board, or PAB. This is the first of a set of modules provided either online or in person to help prepare you for your role as a member of a site visit team. As we go through this module, you may stop the presentation at any time and start back up again. Throughout this presentation, we encourage you to write down questions that come to you. If your question is not answered, or you are confused about something in this module, please contact a member of PAB's staff and we will get back to you shortly with an answer. In addition to these training modules, the PAB's website has several valuable manuals and additional resources for site visitors. Please read these manuals and review these resources prior to your first visit, as they will refresh your memory of some of this information and provide more detailed information than we can share in this training module. This training module will provide you with background on the standards used by the PAB for the accreditation of degrees in planning. Throughout this module, we will present each standard and its related criteria, as well as discuss the rationale for the various requirements. In addition, for each criterion, we will present some examples of situations that might impact compliance. By the time you complete this module, it is important to us that you will have achieved 4 important learning outcomes. First, you will be able to identify significant aspects of the standards. Second, you will be able to interpret the expectations of compliance with the standards. Third, you will be able to describe appropriate documentation that should be included in a self-study report to support compliance. And fourth, you will be able to offer possible resolutions related to challenges in meeting the standards. In other words, by the end of this training module, you should have a good grasp of the PAB standards and be able to participate with your fellow site visitors in an informed discussion about a program's compliance with each criterion. You will learn more and more as you visit additional programs, but we want to ensure that you have a basic understanding of the standards and their related criteria before your first site visit. Accreditation standards are critical factors used to assess program quality and success. Each standard is supported by multiple criteria, which provide specific detail on relevant aspects of the standard itself. Assessment of compliance with the standards is done at the individual criterion level. The site visit team will assess compliance with a criterion as either met, partially met, or unmet. In this module, we will examine in detail standard number 1, strategic planning and progress. Please pause the presentation to read the introductory preamble to this standard. This first standard requires that programs are intentional, systematic, and reflective in establishing their own activities and seeking to continuously improve. The strategic planning process begins with setting goals, defining activities to achieve those goals, identifying responsibilities for key participants in those activities, and establishing a timeline for those activities. The strategic plan should identify mechanisms for determining progress and goal achievement. The plan's effectiveness should be regularly assessed. That means data must be collected and analyzed, with changes instituted as needed. This cycle should be maintained through the life of the plan and replicated in subsequent plans. In an important way, strategic planning characterizes how a program seeks excellence in achieving its own mission. There are 6 criteria within the Strategic Planning and Progress Standard, which capture the various elements in a deliberative and transparent self-improvement process. Let's address each one in turn. For each, we will review the text of the criterion, highlight PAB's expectations regarding compliance, and share some situations that may challenge that compliance. Examples are meant to illustrate situations that might be red flags for site visitors. They are not intended to serve as strict definitions of lack of compliance. Prior strategic plan and accreditation review is the first criterion within the Strategic Planning and Progress Standard. Please pause the presentation to read this text. This first criterion takes a look back in time at the strategic plan that was in place at the last accreditation review, accompanied by detail on the program's performance relative to that plan. PAB's requirement about historic strategic planning and performance reinforces the expectation that a program will be engaged in ongoing assessment with the goal of continuous improvement. If, at the previous site visit, there were criteria assessed as either partially met or unmet, the self-study report will also contain detail on actions the program has taken to come into compliance with those criteria. Programs should be engaged in review of progress toward compliance with PAB accreditation standards, as well as progress toward their strategic goals. The following 3 examples describe situations that could be viewed as challenges to meeting this criterion. 1. Key stakeholders did not contribute to the development of the plan. It was developed solely by the program's faculty. 2. There is insufficient evidence that a prior strategic plan was actually implemented in any significant or demonstrable way. 3. A program's curriculum may have undergone significant revisions in a few areas, but the faculty are unable to describe the basis of or justification for the changes. Current strategic plan is the second criterion within the strategic planning and progress standard. Please pause the presentation to read this text. The second criterion returns us to the present, as the program describes its current strategic plan and planning process undertaken to develop it. In its self-study report, the program will provide detail on how and when the plan was created, as well as involvement from others in that development, including students, alumni, members of the profession, employers, etc. Inclusive engagement involving all constituents is critical to ensure a high-quality plan. Furthermore, this engagement should garner the breadth and depth of participation and support for the plan to ensure its success. The program must also provide detail on how and when its performance, relative to its current plan, will be assessed. If the plan has been in place for a sufficient period of time, the program must also provide evidence of that assessment, as well as detail on any actions taken and any resulting objectives that were modified. There are 2 sub-criteria related to this criterion which are critical components of the strategic plan: a specific mission statement, as well as strategic goals that are supported by measurable objectives. While a vision statement may describe a program's aspirations for the future, a mission statement describes what the program does today and why. A good mission statement should include a clear, concise expression of the program's purpose, enduring values, philosophy, and commitments. Therefore, the mission statement must establish how and why the program focuses on particular aspects of a planning education and practice, and what the program expects from its faculty, students, and graduates. To ensure ongoing support from the college and university, the program's mission statement should reflect their mission statements as well. This mission statement is critical to the accreditation review process. PAB assesses compliance with accreditation standards based on the defined mission of the program. For example, for programs with a strong emphasis toward community outreach in their mission, PAB would expect to see more significant student and faculty activities devoted to community engagement compared to a program with less emphasis on community outreach. Strategic goals designed to achieve the program's mission more fully should be supported by measurable objectives. If objectives are not measurable, it is not possible to determine whether a goal has been met. Some goals are designed to achieve the program's mission within the context of recent or recurring challenges. Other goals may be aspirational and aim toward excellence for the program in truly fulfilling its mission. Planning program strategic goals must be reviewed, revised, and renewed over time to achieve continuous program improvement. The following 3 examples describe situations that could be viewed as challenges to meeting this criterion. 1. There is no clear connection between the mission and the strategic plan. The plan does not reflect the program's mission statement. 2. The program's strategic plan has goals, but objectives are not measurable. 3. Goals in the strategic plan are not aspirational. Further, the program already meets all benchmarks of measurement. Programmatic assessment is the third criterion within the Strategic Planning and Progress Standard. Please pause the presentation to read this text. Programmatic assessment is an ongoing process designed to monitor and improve the performance of the degree granting unit as a whole. As stated in the criterion, an accredited program should have an approach, methodology, and indicators for measuring its success in achieving the goals in its strategic plan. These measurements must be described and detailed in the self-study report, as well as the program's interpretation of any results in achieving strategic goals. If goals are not achieved, the program must identify appropriate adjustments to planning activities and establish a new set of measurable outcomes. If goals are achieved, the program can establish new, more aspirational goals. PAB has identified 5 indicators of programmatic outcomes that must be documented in the self-study report. Let's look at these in greater detail. The first outcome measures graduates' satisfaction with their preparation for their current employment. The second outcome documents the extent to which graduates are engaged in their communities through service to the community or through the planning profession. These are both indirect measures that provide some evidence of student achievement after graduation. The third outcome is the rate at which students are retained or returned to the institution from one year to the next year, accompanied by the rates at which they graduate from the program within a specified time frame. Employment in planning or planning-related professional positions is another program outcome of interest to PAB. Programs must define a planning and planning-related position and must track its full-time graduates to determine employment in such positions within 1 year of graduation. Graduate certification relates specifically to the AICP exam. The AICP credential is the recognized professional credential in the U.S. planning profession. As such, information regarding program graduates' pass rates can provide a measure of program quality and the effectiveness in the preparation of professional planners. PAB requires that programs provide data in their self-study reports regarding the number of students who take the AICP exam, as well as the percentage of takers who pass it. Alternative credentials, if appropriate, can supplement AICP data. Items 1 through 5 are referred to as universal measures, as all programs are required to report on the same topics. Item number 6 allows the program to select and report on a unique outcome from a wide variety of other program-related outcomes associated with its strategic plan. These outcomes are other measures of achievement of strategic goals and objectives as contained in the program's strategic plan. There are numerous ways by which compliance with this criterion can be questioned. The following 3 examples describe situations that could be viewed as challenges to meeting this criterion. 1. The self-study report omits information required by PAB or contains inconsistent or conflicting data. 2. Survey data cited as evidence could have an extremely low response rate without explanation. 3. Data reported may not be reflective of the program's mission or strategic plan, but were instead data that was readily available. Student Learning Outcomes Assessment is the 4th criterion within the Strategic Planning and Progress Standard. Please pause the presentation to read this text. Over the past 2 decades, accreditors have shifted their focus from inputs to education to student learning outcomes. Rather than assuming that qualified and effective teachers produce well-educated and prepared planning graduates, Student Learning Outcomes Assessment asks the questions: what do you want students to learn by the time they graduate from your program? What student-based evidence can you provide to demonstrate that learning has occurred at the level you define is acceptable for your graduates? Some of the impetus for measuring student learning outcomes has come from widespread recognition of the limitations of traditional course grades, specifically their questionable capacity to reflect change, growth, and improvement by the student, and the non-comparability of grades from institution to institution and from instructor to instructor. PAB requires programs to have a robust assessment plan for documenting, measuring, assessing, and achieving student learning. Programs are encouraged to define their own student learning outcomes that are reflective of their mission and vision. By identifying student learning outcomes associated with the knowledge, skills, and values of the profession contained in PAB Standard 4 curriculum, a program ensures it is focused on producing well-prepared entry-level professionals. The attainment of these student learning outcomes demonstrates that the program is meeting the goal of preparing students for professional practice. The program should identify student learning outcomes associated with the core knowledge, skills, and values of the planning profession and develop valid measures of student attainment of these learning outcomes. As the criterion states, the program must identify its student learning outcomes and document the approach, methodology, and indicators for the measurement of these outcomes. The program must also document changes made to the curriculum or teaching practices to improve learning as a result of these assessment processes. The following 3 examples describe situations that could be viewed as challenges to meeting this criterion. 1. A program has no defined measures of student learning or achievement. 2. Some assessments are based largely on inputs, such as completing a course or course instructor teaching effectiveness. 3. A program may define student learning outcomes that do not reflect its defined mission. Strategic issues for the next 5 to 7 years is the 5th criterion within the Strategic Planning and Progress Standard. Please pause the presentation to read this text. Strategic planning is not a one-time event to be completed just before the preparation of a self-study report. Effective ongoing strategic planning includes developing responses to currently unmet goals and the identification of emerging issues that may affect the program over the next accreditation cycle. With the development of strategic responses to unmet goals and expected changes, a program can demonstrate that it is engaging in inclusive, ongoing strategic planning for meeting its goals and objectives. By documenting the steps to advance these goals in its self-study report, a program can demonstrate its active process for continuous improvement. To demonstrate compliance, the program should outline specific strategies to be implemented between the current and next accreditation review to address identified strategic issues. This should include both the issues and ways of addressing these issues. The following 3 examples describe situations that could be viewed as challenges to meeting this criterion. 1. Issues identified are immediate in nature, not long-term. 2. Issues identified are not supported by detail on plans for implementation steps or a timeline. 3. There is no evidence of a systematic approach to the strategic planning process. Public information is the 6th criterion within the Strategic Planning and Progress Standard. Please pause the presentation to read this text. The final criterion in this standard describes the requirement for providing specific information to the public on the program's performance. As you may remember from Module A, PAB is recognized as a specialized or programmatic accreditor by CHIA, the Council on Higher Education Accreditation. CHIA has policies, procedures, and standards with which accreditors themselves must comply. In this instance, one of CHIA's standards states that accrediting organizations require their accredited programs to provide consistent information about academic quality and student achievement to the public. PAB complies with this requirement via this criterion. Here you will see a list of program outcomes which all PAB accredited programs must publish on their websites. Some of these are outcomes discussed earlier in this standard. Only 2 are new. Student achievement allows programs a great deal of latitude as they can interpret this concept in a way of their own choosing. That said, PAB's preference is for direct measures of assessment, such as internship or employer evaluations of student knowledge or skills, as compared with indirect measures, such as survey satisfaction data from students or alumni. There is also preference for measures tied to specific learning objectives. The cost of tuition is defined as the tuition and fees for a full-time student for an academic year. Retention rates measure the percentage of students who return to continue their education the following year. They can be an indication of student satisfaction with the program, frequency of course offerings, rigor of the curriculum, or students' ability to finance their education, among a large number of other factors. Graduation rates can be an indicator of how well an institution is serving its students. A 6-year undergraduate and a 4-year graduate rate accommodate part-time and other non-traditional students who are becoming more common in higher education. The number of degrees produced provides information on trends that may impact the overall success of the program. AICP certification is the only nationwide independent verification of urban and regional planners' knowledge, skills, and values. The AICP pass rate tells the public how successful a program's students are in gaining this certification within 5 years of earning a graduate degree or 7 years of earning an undergraduate degree. Employment in a planning or planning-related job within 1 year of graduation demonstrates the program's and the students' success in achieving the goal of preparation for employment. On its website, PAB provides links to this information for every program, thereby providing an easy way to compare performance on these measures across accredited planning programs. The following 2 examples describe situations that could be viewed as challenges to meeting this criterion. 1. Data on the program's website is either outdated or missing. 2. Data on the website regarding AICP pass rates is consolidated for a certain number of years as opposed to presented in the format required by the criterion. This concludes the module for PAB Standard 1, Strategic Planning and Progress. On behalf of the PAB board and staff, we want to thank you for completing this module. We invite you now to return to the PAB website to complete training for this module by taking a short quiz about the information in this presentation. You will receive your score on the quiz, and the PAB staff will record your results. Thank you.